Hello, so this is another training video to do with shadow puppetry, which we started to look at last week. Here's a shadow screen. So this is a frame with a light behind it, a very simple light. The light is a torch. You can use iPhones. The torches on iPhones are absolutely fine. Actually, they're very, very sharp and very good for this kind of work. And I really want to just introduce shadow puppetry to you a little bit more than we did last week. So I'm going to start just by saying that shadow puppetry is a very ancient form. There are accounts of puppetry in China for 2,000 years. And here I have a very, very beautiful, these are made for tourists really, but this is a shadow puppet from China, and China has this really, really beautiful tradition, and as you can see the face is really beautifully cut out to get those shadows. It's not the only country that has a very well established tradition of shadow puppetry. There is also this incredibly beautiful and also ancient as well type of puppetry called wayang kulit from Indonesia, and I'll just show you this one. This one isn't in a wrapper, so this again is just a tourist puppet, but the hands and the joints in this one are particularly made in a way that means that they are jointed so that they can create these wonderful, very elegant, beautiful movements. And this tradition would have lots of wonderful music by a gamelan performance. So wayang kulit is another tradition, and there are shadow puppets in Africa as well, and there are shadow puppet companies. I'm going to just show you some of the techniques that we did last week, and I looked at last week, with very, very simple puppets. So the ones that we were using last week were very simple paper puppets. Here's the one that I made last week, and I made it on that day because I don't have any puppets at home because I'm locked out of my office where all my puppets live. So this is one that I made specially, and I'm going to make a complimentary performance as well for this, so that you can get a sense of how you can make your puppets. And I know you have been making puppets as well, so it's just some other techniques. So this is a rod on a piece of card, stuck to the piece of card. Another form of puppetry that takes that to the next level is when you start to joint the puppets. And the joints on the puppets are made with these split pins. It's probably easier if I show you on the screen. And then you can get kind of more dynamic movements. This one, for some reason, has just turned into a bit of a kind of geezer with a big club hands who's kind of enjoying moving around with his arms a lot. You can put rods to the feet as well, but once you've got shadow joints, you've got points of where the joints come into the puppets, you can get all kinds of different sorts of movements. And that can come into the screen, and you can do subtle movements, you can do quite violent movements, you can jump up and down, and you can be even more animated. And the only thing that's part of those joints that I use, which are quite useful, are these things, which are split pins. So you have a brass pin like that. If you're struggling to find them, the two first puppets that I showed you do not have split pins. They just have little bits of string holding those joints together. And the split pins, I mean, these are just things that are just used in craft making now. Are hardly ever used for stationery, but they were used for stationery. They're very useful things. The other form of puppetry that I was playing with recently is to take pieces of scrap plastic. So this is see-through plastic from a bottle, and I've cut it off the bottle, and I've then just used as a template an image from a newspaper of a figure, and that figure I've then taken and drawn on with permanent marker, And as you can see, you can get quite a nice effect here. You can even cut into this material and make it look what's like an etching or some sort of like print. So you can get really artistic, and they can be very representational and represent figures. And I'm not the greatest of illustrator or drawer, so it helps me because I can get figures that are quite realistic from simple, just copying images that I see in the press or in the newspaper. And I really like this effect. Here's another figure, same technique as a woman, and as you can see seeing through the figure makes them kind of quite present, but also gives another possibility, and they look very artistic. I really like this effect. I've used this a few times. And then finally we've got this chap here who appears to have a mask on because of COVID, so he's quite a interesting character. So hopefully you can see them okay. I'll look back at this video in a second and double check you can see these images. Then the other thing that you can do is you can take simple wire, bend the wire in all kinds of different ways, and as you can see, this is a bit cartoon-like, a bit comic-like, simple figure, but it's really quite nice with wire because sometimes that's hard to see, maybe, I'm not sure, I'm looking again, checking that in the video, but this technique is lovely because you can also trace a drawing that you've done and in the wire, and because it's wire it has this kind of bounciness, it has this kind of natural movement, which is rather quite sweet and quite lovely. And those are some of the shadow puppet techniques we've done. The other thing that's important to remember is on here, these buildings in part of this set here, they are just cardboard cutouts. So they create the shadow, and then the colours are all from coloured acetate or coloured plastic. And then this sun over here, which at the moment isn't very bright, but maybe that will look a little bit brighter now on the video when I shine it like that, has sweet wrappers, so you can use sweet wrappers to open up that thing. And as you can see, this is having quite a strange effect on the video because I'm moving the light. And also when you can with this format get quite experimental and start playing with the position of the light, and it will create different kinds of shadows. So actually when the light moves, it becomes a way of animating the figure and making the story happen. And you can get all kinds of different effects by just moving the light, and you can do that with iPhone lights very, very well because they're a very sharp light source. So that's the end of this short video about shadow puppetry. When you're doing shadow puppetry, you can use this simple format here of a frame, and this frame has a piece of paper that can be you can see through it, you can shine through it, and I've just clamped this to a desk, but you could just put a sheet or you could put this kind of material on a window. It's a very versatile form, shadow puppetry, and very transportable. All you need is a light source, and as we discussed last week, you can even use natural light, daily light from a window, so it doesn't have to be just performances for nighttime. And it's the kind of late afternoon here, so there's still quite a bit of light. So the other complementary video to this is the short shadow puppet show that I did on Wednesday, and I just thought it'd be good to capture that separately as something and be very focused on that. Looking forward to our next meeting. All the work that you've been sharing is absolutely wonderful, and it's great to see. So looking forward to kind of having that conversation again on Wednesday. That's about it. Goodbye.